So this is my install video of a Vixen 4-horn with air compressor kit into a 2015 F250 Superduty, and wanted to kind of show you some of the modifications I made so that this becomes a pretty seamless kit. The horn mounting bracket, I was doing some research online and found a company that makes air horn kits for the Super Duty, and they have a horn mounting bracket which interfaces right in front of the spare tire in factory holes. Obviously the hole pattern that was on here was to interface with their horn kit, and then their horn kit's only a 3-horn kit, so the 4-horn kit here is a little longer, so I had to make some modifications in order to get it to mount to that plate. Best location, and this mounts really, really nicely right above the spare tire. So you drop the spare tire, you make some brackets like these. This just happens to be, I think it's 3/16 steel. 2 holes that interface with the existing holes in the sheet metal structure that holds the spare tire, and then 2 additional holes per to interface with the feet of the air compressor. Now this air compressor should be mounted pump side up. You want to do that so that, it's mostly if you're in cold climates, because if you mount this the other way, where your pump and your switch are all towards the bottom, condensation will build up, and then ultimately it'll freeze and you'll have things break. So this is your drain. It should always be facing downward. Another modification you have to do to the tank, because it is mounting above the spare tire. Once the spare tire is raised up, this is completely closed off. You need a street elbow to replace the straight fitting that normally screws right in here to hook up your air line hose to. So a 90-degree street. This is a 1/8" NPT thread. And then your gauge port, it sticks up too high to fit up in there. So that is a 16" NPT. So that's just a plug. Okay, we're under the car facing facing forward. There's a spare tire, and there's the rear differential, the left shock. And as I come around the front of this tire, I've raised it back up to check clearances, and you can see there are the horn assembly right there, and there's that bracket that I was telling you about. So the spare tire is very, very close. You can see here I can barely get my finger in between the spare tire and the bell of the horn. And then the very highest horn up there is very close to the sheet metal that holds the top of the spare tire carrier. And to try and get a little more clearance, instead of this bracket that these horns mount on being flush mounted to this bracket, I actually shimmed it. If you have more modest tires, I think these are the 20-inch tires on here, and all terrain, so they are a large diameter, so it's very tight in here. Get over to the compressor install. I'm sorry this camera is so close, but there's the winch that pulls the spare tire up, and here's the bracket for the hitch. And you'll notice on the driver's side there's actually there's a hole here slotted, and another hole here in the frame rail, and then a hole here in this cross brace, and a hole here in the cross brace. You can see it. This is what it looks like when it's not being used. And a hole here, and for whatever reason there's not a hole here on the passenger side, but the driver's side it seems to work out perfectly. You do have to offset your holes in this 3/16 steel brace that I have going across there, and I used 1/2" spacers, nylon spacers here, so that this bracket is pretty much level. It's still recessed below the mounting height of the spare tire, so everything's nice and nice and protected up there. This is about as dry of an area as you're going to find up above the spare tire here. So I'm confident the compressor will hold up. It's not going to fail as a result of environmental conditions anyways. So that's what that is, looks like. Horn mount adaptation number 3, 1-inch square, 1/8-inch wall, aluminum tubing. Okay, last video on the horn mount. I've tried several spacers here to try and get proper separation between these largest horns and the spare tire. So this is an 1.5 inch thick piece of nylon. Okay, it's the last time I'm going to be under this damn truck. So horns are up and mounted, and as shown in the previous video, there's a 1.5 inch spacer here to keep those horns away from the spare tire. Here's the air compressor I previously shown on how it was mounted, but now I've also put in a couple of relays here. One is a 30 amp relay, so a switch power at the dash can go ahead and turn on the system. From that point on, there's a pressure switch built into the compressor that turns it on and off based on pressure. The other, I use the same relay so that I can intermittently switch the ground for the solenoid valve that switches the air from the compressor to the horns. Maybe a little bit overkill. I use the same 30 amp breaker, but Vixen doesn't give you any information as to how much power this solenoid draws, and I only have like the switch I'm using is a 5 amp switch. Power runs up and over, across, and then runs along the frame rail all the way to the front, where it runs up to the battery, and there's a 30 amp fuse applied right there. The switch powers for the relays, they also run in that same bundle all the way along the frame rail, except they run through a knock up in the bottom of the floor, and I'll show that video later. Okay, I got a little sloppy with the last details of the wiring. So I ran those two up, and I think I noticed under the passenger seat next to the frame rail, there's a penetration through the floorboards. That came up along the console. And then on this particular vehicle, next to my brake controller, there was a coin slot, which is really kind of silly. So I kind of milled it out a little bit, left most of the material there, and then attached a piece of 1/8 inch thick stainless, countersunk the heads, and then put 2 switches in here. This one I wired reverse so that when you push it in, it actually turns off, and when it's in the out position, it's actually on, and then the horn. Okay, I picked up switched power from behind the glove box. It comes off pretty easy. There's a little tab on the one side you push in, and this thing falls down. There was switch power, a large gauge switch power. There was a yellow with a red stripe wire. I tapped into, found ground behind the dash. So now as soon as I put the key in the ignition here, you hear the compressor kick on. But here's the light panel.
Doing something with your light.
Let's turn it off, turn it on. I also did it for the lights as well for that. The blue lights should look pretty good. I think if I turn on my background lights here, you kind of see the kind of matches. It's the best you can pretty much do with aftermarket switches. So that's it. Good luck with your install. Alright, after a couple of weeks of use, I started hearing some strange sounds coming from the compressor, and I got the compressor partway pulled down right now, and one of the cylinder screws, I was able to see it from the outside the vehicle. This thing was like way up like this. It was just vibrating around. So, word to the wise, don't trust these products when you get them from the manufacturer. There's absolutely no Loctite on this thread. You can see that's clean as can be. So, go ahead and get yourself a little Loctite, put it on the threads, and snug them back down again. Otherwise, you'll be dropping the spare tire off, pulling the compressor back down again, and doing what I'm doing.